Hello and welcome to Astrocast for January 28th, 2026. We'll talk about this intense moment in history. We've been through so much this month and we have so much ahead of us. We're going to talk for the next 15 minutes about what's going on astrologically, and then we're going to bring in author Sarah Potter to talk about her book, Sober Magic, and the whole process of transforming Neptune, which is a powerful place, and her chart shows it well. But first, let's talk about today and what we've been experiencing lately. This week, and my heart is in Minnesota with so many, where I lived for 7 years and where I have still so many friends and so admire the process. Minnesota, we have several charts from Minnesota. One of them has a pile of planets in Neptune, and since Neptune was in Pisces, and it's just finishing in Pisces, Neptune brings up what is the role of the martyr. And there have been people killed by ice all over the country in, 9 since the turn of the year. But the two in Minneapolis were so well documented and so visible. And the city has already been trained through Philando Castillo, who was killed by a policeman when they saw that he had a gun in the glove box, but he was not brandishing it, and he fed kids at a school and had a permit for that. And his murder was, I went to his funeral. It was a huge multicultural, you know, uh, approach, and the protests were wild. And then George Floyd was killed. Again, misuse of power, and they were out in the streets in Minneapolis for months protesting and organizing. Well, they got their systems down. And so when Renee Good was killed, and we have her chart, the chart for the moment of her death, and then Anthony Pretty, could you make up those names? Is uh, was murdered, they knew how to respond, and it's been really moving to watch. But we see today one of the pieces I'm going to bring up first, the chart for when Renee was murdered, if I can find it. Maybe not. I won't have it at the moment. But what we see is that I'm going to find it. She was there was a time in beginning of March beginning of January 7th and 8th, when there was a total lineup of the Sun, Venus, and Mars all conjunct in Capricorn and directly opposed Jupiter. Now that it was an exact conjunction, all at exactly the same degree. And we saw that as a need to willfully use your willpower. Now, there are so many different ways that can be done. Not everybody was, the vast majority of the universe was not murdered that day, nor did they murder anybody. In Tehran, that was the day that they killed probably somewhere between, they've documented over 3,000 protesters were shot in the streets. It could be much higher. They're still trying to get a clear image of that. And the internet was cut out throughout Iran. That incredible misuse of power. The rest of us can see that use of power and say, how do we want to use that to control our lives, to become more in control, to be healthier, to organize, because that is the Capricorn key word. And the people who protest, the rallies and marches in response, it's been beautiful to watch. Now, we saw that when Pluto went into Aquarius last year, it brings the two sides of Pluto in Aquarius, or many sides, but the Pluto in Aquarius has been key. We have this lineup of planets that was all in Capricorn during the murder of Renee Good. And then as each one has moved forward, the Sun, first Venus, then Mercury, then the Sun, and just yesterday, Mars, they all tagged Pluto as they went through. We saw that coming and said, the issues now of how we use power, because Pluto asks us key piece, how do you choose to use power? And we think of all the descent myths which are related to the Pluto mythology. of whether it was Christ being hung on the cross and then having the power as he rose from the dead, or Inanna's descent to the underworld through the seven gates, Persephone being hauled into the underworld and finding out who they truly are, and then coming with that empowerment up up from the underworld more powerful than ever. Usually in those myths, there is the perpetrator and the person who was sacrificed, who went through the cauldrons of death and rebirth and came back. Now, we see, liberty itself seems to be going through that process now. Uh, Democracy, the right of the person to live. Now, the sun has been at high flares. If you go to spaceweather.com, you can see how active the sun is. We've talked a lot about this before on my channels, that when the sun is the volume control for all the other aspects. It doesn't make things happen, but it magnifies all the other aspects. It makes it hard to see the infinite skies. Uh, the it puts up a static level. It's beautiful when we see the aurora borealis, but those very static storms, which are so beautiful in the night sky, make it hard to see into the depths of the universe. And that a lot of action happens here. It's like putting the heat under popcorn. Everything pops and moves. So you see that roughly 11-year cycles, but not always. Sometimes there's long spans in between, and it's not always the same peak. The highest ones were the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the mid 60s, and right now it's cooking. It was not expected to be this excited. So the sun is, amping up everything that happens in history. We've got this going on here at the moment. We've just had that Uranus, Mars Pluto conjunction, and Neptune has just entered Aries. Now, Neptune takes 165 years around the zodiac. It's very slow, and it'll be here for another 13 years. It dipped in here last summer. We saw some of the issues coming up, and it retrograded back into Pisces to finish up its chapter there. Now, Neptune in Pisces has Neptune isn't so action oriented. It's belief. It's what we long for. We're going to talk a lot more about Neptune later in the show, but it's that need for magic, the need for more than the natural world. But it can also be escapism, illusion, delusion, drowning addictions on the negative side. Positive is spirituality, intuition, understanding, imagination, the ability to imagine the world better and then do it and move out of passivity into action. So Neptune's been in Pisces, and it could bring up the questions about what is truth? What is my path? What's really going on here? And we see that one of the bigger clear arguments in this last 2 months, as that our government has jumped in and said what happened without looking at any of the footage, without having any idea what actually happened. There are statutes against that. That we have that our government officials should not speak before they know what happened, and this government does it all the time. So what is truth? And the fact that the film footage so undermines their description of what happened has more undermined them than the experience. And that's kind of search for what is the truth. Now Neptune goes into Aries, and Neptune in Aries can idealize action. It wants, like, let's do something about this. Neptune went into Aries, and the Trump administration, Neptune went in Aries just as this Mercury conjunct Venus, and we're beginning to have some negotiation. I think it's an illusion of a negotiation. I think it's pretending to step back. I think they're going to throw a few people under the bus, the short guy and the woman, and say it was all their fault when that's not true. They were carrying out orders. But Neptune was last in Aries a couple of times in 1533, just as Anne Boleyn was beheaded and Henry was ruling the roost. He declared himself head of his own church and started taking over more. Pizarro was beheaded, the last Incan Empire then. In the 1711s, 1861 were the last two times that Neptune went into Aries. Now, 1861, it went into Aries. The um, the within 18 hours of the beginning of the American Civil War. It went in that night. And that the beginning, that kind of valuing conflict and looking for a fiery answer. Now, one of the things that I've seen in modern versions of ancient transits, the subjects are the same, but we seem to adapt faster. So instead of a 30-year war, we have a year or two where there's a blowup. I'm hoping that this time we adjust faster. There's another aspect. Saturn is about to follow into Aries, and that will be coming soon. Let's see. Before that, Uranus turns direct on February 3rd. Now, when Uranus turns direct, we're going to see a Uranus, when a planet's been retrograde, it's been retrograde for months and months. When a planet turns direct, whatever it's spinning, what its subject has been spinning one direction, it's like you suddenly spin backwards and you get the whirls and eddies. The energy is uncomfortable. We see this with the day that Mercury retrogrades and Mercury turns direct. When it's switching direction, it's more of a problem than when Mercury is busy moving backwards. It doesn't like to hold still. Well, Uranus is going to be turning direct, and that could be weather systems, storms, or just, an abrupt shift in communication, trying to understand what's going on. It can help in that it's turning direct and then moving into Gemini soon, in a couple months ahead. But as it turns direct, after that expecting some tumult around February 3rd, we may begin to see changes moving forward in a good direction. Now, that Uranus to the will be at the moment, it's going to be heading in with. So we'll look forward to kind of keeping things calm and steady during that rather busy time. It then squares Mercury on the 5th. Now, Uranus squaring Mercury asks us to think about, what are we ready to change our minds? What needs to shift directions? You can think of Uranus like the clutch. It helps us shift gears. So it can change how we're seeing things, how we're talking about them, what's communicating. It can literally make travel interesting. It can bring electrical issues. But it may also ask all of us not to change our minds without checking our facts, because it can be shocking information that is not true. So it's asking you to really confirm your facts all that week. But in particular, to look for, if there's sudden shocking information, check it out. If it holds up, does it challenge some long held belief? And do you need to adjust it? Or do you need to make changes in the world because you already understand the situation? So it asks for communication and change, and a mind willing to shift gears. Watch that our tension levels can run high then. It can be a little hard to sleep. It's really a helpful aspect if you're in the middle of a move or you're trying to settle into something new. And so, you can use it well, but notice that extra nervous energy that might be running around February 5th. Saturn enters Aries on the 13th, and the Sun squares Uranus on the 15th. So it may not be a particularly settled holiday. And when Saturn heads into Aries on the 13th, this is right before it heads in, just minutes. And then there'll be a lineup of planets in Pisces. We see that Mars-Pluto conjunction is still lingering all this month. And that Mars-Pluto conjunction adds an extra muscularity to our willpower and what we're doing. So use your willpower wisely, think of it carefully, but put it to good work. If you've got something you need to get done, you've got boxes to move, a change to make, a book to write, that you can put this extra determination into good causes and into important things. The Piscean, Venus is in Pisces, Mercury is in Pisces, and that we still need time in our inner world, no matter how busy we are, to take care of our hearts. Saturn and Neptune conjuncts on February 20th. The Saturn and Neptune conjunct in 1917 as America entered World War I and the Russians began the revolution. And it was conjunct in 1952 to 53 when Queen Elizabeth took the throne, and in 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell. And we saw, and the communist rule broke down. It can be dissolving a wall, quite literally. It can dissolve old systems. It can help us be inspired by new systems. But we really have to look at where are the boundaries, where are they working for us, where are they not, how do we take authority in our own lives? And Mercury retrogrades on February 26th as Mars squares Uranus. So the last week, right before that, on February 22nd, Venus trines Neptune, trines Jupiter. If it's too busy around Valentine's Day, consider celebrating your Valentine's, your heart, your love, your care, your heart chakra on February 22nd as Venus trines Jupiter. Mercury, get your work done and things in place before Mercury retrogrades on the 25th. And look and just kind of travel safely, prioritize safety that last week of February as Mars squares Uranus and Mercury stations. By the beginning of March, it's retrograde until March 20th. During that retrograde time, it is, remember, it's most difficult right as it's turning retrograde and right as it's turning direct. But so the rest of that early March will be about introspection. We'll talk more about that at our next episode, which is the last Wednesday in February. So take care of yourself, feel that push of history. We're really at, this is big picture. What's happening now will go down in the books. So take notes, but take care of yourself. We're seeing in the big picture, and especially until the planets start lining up into Pisces. Mercury starts first. Right now, it's easy to watch what's going on in the news and not notice what you need or what the people around you need. So take care of them, take care of one another. And we're going to come back now to Neptune and talk to my friend Sarah Potter, who has written a book on just this. And we will bring her on. There we go. Hello, Sarah, and welcome.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here with you.
It's wonderful. And your book, Sober Magic, we were talking about Neptune, you and I, and that Neptune's continuum, like it has 165 years around the zodiac, and Neptune's positive side is spirituality, imagination, creativity, intuition, water, things that flow. Challenging Neptune is alcoholism, addiction, uh, illusion, delusion, escapism. And we've talked about, in astrology, we often say it's spirit or spirits, that the hunger for positive Neptune can be really strong and beautiful. And if we don't have a way of feeding it, we can get stuck in the negative. This month, as Saturn and Neptune conjunct, it's all about how do we put good, healthy discipline, not restrictions, but good, healthy discipline on our Neptune. So you're the perfect guest for this month. So tell us about your work.
Well, I work as a tarot reader and psychic medium. And through writing my book,
Neptune and
Sober
Neptune.
Magic,
Mhm.
through writing my book, Sober Magic, I have been, it's funny, as I was waiting in the waiting room, I was like, how long have I been sober? And it's sneaking up on 9 years now. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And through writing this book, I was able to go through another initiation of healing and understanding of myself and my creative process. And
Mhm,
I realized
mhm,
that for me, one of the reasons I had turned to substances was due to my deeply sensitive nature
mhm,
and being able to understand how being sensitive is a good thing. It's challenging, but understanding how to work with it, and this career path has definitely helped me understand how to work with it for the better rather than a destructive way. And I love working with other people who are also sensitive and feeling big feelings. I work with a lot of creatives and helping all of us understand how to work with our intuition in a beautiful way.
I think that's wonderful. And I think that working with it, that's a positive use of Saturn. Negative Saturn is other people's authority or restricting me. Positive use is how do I work with it? How do I give it the form and the structure to work with my Neptune? And I notice when we put up your chart here, um, that you were born with Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, very close within 4 degrees, and that is very common. It's Jupiter is the biggest planet, bigger than all the other planets put together, and it expands whatever it touches, for better or for worse. And so a lot of people think, "Oh, it's so wonderful, Jupiter." Well, Jupiter can mean way too much sometimes. But Jupiter conjunct Neptune is you need to use your Neptune. And if positive Neptune, you've moved into magic and service and care and intuition and spirituality and empathy instead of escapism and addictions. It's also connected often with blood sugar issues. When I see Neptune and um, Jupiter together, opposite, square, trine, I often ask about the blood sugar because I remember reading that like 80% of alcoholics are hypoglycemic, and that if you can level out their blood sugar, that alcohol acts like a giant sugar influx, and that raise and drop of sugar levels adds to the feeling of I can't cope. That if you can take care of that sugar level, then it helps tremendously with sobriety. And I thought that was really interesting because it's a different way of aspecting, like the world is too sweet. Oh, the
Yeah.
world's not sweet enough. That's that ephemeralness of whether it's an
Yes.
emotional gestalt or a physical gestalt.
That is fascinating because I do watch my sugar. That is something.
Absolutely. And I think that they're connected in not a bad way, but it's an interesting symbolic inside outside approach that, again, what I love about astrology is you often see a symbol that you see a holistic approach to something. That if you're seeing someone with immune issues, you look to their Mars and Pluto, like, are they having trouble defending themselves? If you look to
Wow.
someone with this combination, it's like, how are you using your sensitivity? You have lots, Neptune, Jupiter, of Neptune, sensitivity, intuition, permeability, feeling connected. And how do you use that in a good way? I think that's one reason why so many alcohol treatment programs, depend upon spending time in a room with people that are also working on these issues because you soak up psychically the idea that you can do it. And
Absolutely.
and I think that kind of like how do you I will often think of people with lots of Neptune in their chart, like those old experiments in the science programs for little kids where they put a celery stalk in red dye and you watch the dye go up, like that we
Yes.
soak up our surroundings.
Mhm. I
So
can I can very
talk
much
about it.
relate to that.
Mhm,
I can very
mhm,
much relate to that. Well, and I feel like I was thinking a lot about this, like Saturn and Neptune, and something that in my sobriety journey that I've really come to understand is I must have structure. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I have noticed through my work and talking to so many people and connecting with so many people, and even just observing people of all ages, especially I feel like
mhm,
children are so connected to their feelings, their intuition. They haven't been weighed down by the expectations of adulthood. But
mhm,
anyone who has structure and can know what to expect, we're like eating properly, getting enough sleep, having a bit of a routine, which even like, oh, my inner teen is like, routine, no. But
No,
I'm
no.
actually, yeah, I really love structure now. Oh, it still pains me to say, but it's true. And And the way I started building structure in my sobriety was simply meditating for a few minutes and pulling a tarot card. And I would sit with that tarot card, I would journal, I would think about it, and then I would end my day in the same way, connecting to that card again, seeing how the symbols and the ideas of that card came through. And that was my road to structure. And once I was
That
able
I
to
agree
do
is one of the
that,
best ways to learn tarot.
absolutely. It
Mhm,
really is, because then you get to know it as this
mhm.
more living, breathing, multidimensional tool rather than memorizing and just seeing how it fits in and as a storytelling device. And
Absolutely, I completely back you on that.
oh, thank you. I feel like it makes it easier than for me. I was so intimidated by the idea of memorizing so many cards, but when you make it applicable, it makes
Mhm.
sense.
Like, how
And
did that live out in my life today, you know? It's
exactly,
really
and then you
amazing.
start seeing those patterns, and it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, when I pulled this card and then this card, this is what happened. Let's see how that relates to m my current situation." And being able to build structure from that place, then I was able to have more structure on top of that, and discipline, which I really feel like was something that was completely missing, and discipline and devotion to my spiritual path has made it
Hmm.
it's made it, possible to
Mhm,
live with
mhm.
such sensitivity in a way that works and makes sense to me, and having those boundaries in place
That's
means I
beautiful.
can use it in the way that feels like for my highest good as well as others' highest good.
You are describing the best of this coming Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And what we say about Saturn is that it's what you do not have as a baby: bones, teeth, personal authority, and personal discipline, right? It's what you grow over time. And it is such a difference when it's your Saturn, not Saturn that's being pushed on you. You know, when Saturn, when you're 7 years old and Saturn squares Saturn natally, and you have to sit still and behave at school, and your teeth are coming in, and weird shit. Then Saturn opposes Saturn at 14 to 15, and you build up your personal authority, challenging everybody else's. Saturn
Wow.
squares Saturn at 21. The world says you're an adult, but your brain isn't fully grown, and you practice that adulthood like, okay, what if I stay out all night? Oh, I'm tired, maybe I should go to sleep. Things like that. You have to kind of find it all out for yourself in your 20s, and it takes during your until your Saturn return around 28, 29, for your brain to finish growing the part that understands consequence. And so it's really, you can be brilliant, but do you know where it's going to take you? That's something that builds up. So Saturn is something that as you get older, can become your Saturn. It's your decisions, it's your structure. And it's a very different thing when it's working for you because you invented it rather than someone told you got to do it, can feel oppressive.
Yes. Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So this Saturn Neptune conjunction we've got coming up in February is asking us to look at, you know, uh, how do we build our own personal disciplines? And it can be as magical as picking a card in the morning and reviewing it again at night. Whatever works for us to honor that side of our spirituality and our sensitivity. It's a really beautiful way of working with it.
Oh, I love that. Well, and it makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense to me, and that's even how I've looked at writing this book,
Mhm.
was being
Mhm.
able to have that disciplined structure of writing every day and or every week, depending on where I was at in the process. And I structured the book through the cards,
Mhm.
and um and then created rituals and tarot spreads. Some of them were from my first year of sobriety, and others I looked at my journals from that time and looked at what I was doing and expanded upon it or tweaked it a little bit. And I feel like when we have these systems in place, it's easier to channel our
Mhm.
intuition and our
Mhm.
emotions and our feelings, or to even check in with our intuition more deeply. I feel like
Mhm.
it makes me think of the High Priestess card, where the keeper of our inner knowledge and how we really access her in stillness.
That's a beautiful piece about how do we listen at that very deep level. Now,
Yes.
I think as Neptune heads into Aries, and it's just headed into Aries, that okay, there it is. Sorry, it's just as Neptune is heads into Aries, with we are in the process of finding. We want to take more action. We don't want to just observe and feel that beauty. And I think that's something we need to really keep as we start speeding up into uh, this next decade of action. Is what have we learned in this last decade around contacting our spirit and listening at a deep level? And that, now that we hear it, what do we do about it? That's what Neptune going into Aries is going to say. Okay, you feel the woes of the world. Now, what do you want to do about it? And I think that that's going to be an interesting combination of where we take it next.
Oh, I love that. That's very
Mhm.
inspiring to think about.
Yeah. So tell me about how did you find so you found that stepping into spending some time every day with your magical with meditation and with your cards and with that sense of magic helped you stay sober at the beginning?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I had this experience where it was about 5 years of continuous sobriety. I realized, like, how have I been able to stay sober this long? This is the longest I had ever stayed sober. My recovery journey is long, and it's included relapse. And I realized it was my spiritual practice. It was being able to reconnect to my intuition, to my personal sense of power, which is something I love about being a pagan. Excuse me, honoring that connection we all have with every other living being, with nature, with the moon, with the stars, the sun, and being able to be present, understand that it's okay to be uncomfortable. I realized discomfort's not gonna kill me. It used to feel like it, but my bad habits, those had the power to, take me out, but discomfort doesn't. And
Mhm.
really being able to connect to my higher purpose. I think I feel so grateful to have connected to that and to have direction, and I love being of service and helping others and
Mm.
helping I felt so powerless when I finally hit my rock bottom and knew I needed to get sober, and it was such an awful feeling, that disconnection from agency, and I've had the lived experience of change. I really do feel like anyone can change, and we must change. I do feel that
Mhm, mhm,
change is one of the
mhm.
only constants we have, but I don't want anyone to feel disconnected from their agency or power. If you see something and it's dissatisfying or you're vehemently opposed, I do feel like we have the power to create change, and we have the ability to do a little something every day, and that adds up. And my spiritual practice has reminded me of that, and being devoted to ritual and my sobriety, it allows me to do this work.
That's beautiful. Um, my my partner is a cell biologist, and in our early romance, 25 years ago, I think it was around then, we uh, we were talking. Ren was had spent years doing postdocs and PhDs and had spent too much time around scientists and was hungry for spirituality. I had been living in Santa Fe and been around too many spacey, you know, new age people and wanted some grounding. I wanted some real science. So we kind of met in the crossover. Um,
Wow.
and like looking for the intersecting set between how we worked. And one of things that the metaphor of how cells work and what they say about our spiritual perspective. I find it feeds my spirit life, and I think it helps with Neptunian issues. And that that if I think of it in our discussions, that a cell doesn't know, it doesn't know which way to grow. It has to know that from the context. If my skin cell likes to think it is a liver cell, it's not going to do its job, right? It has to know who it is, what it does, that its job is to do this. And the messages my body sends to it might be grow, get well, but it has to know itself well enough and its context to know I grow as a skin cell, not as a liver cell on this hand. But if it just thinks it's all that matters is it and doesn't remember that it's part of a body with responsibilities to everything else, then it can become skin cancer and just make more of itself. And that's a pathology of separation. And that I think of that sense of that it has to be able to switch from individual cell mind to body mind. And I think of that with spiritual practice, that we ourselves we can't do our work if we're stuck in body mind, if we're just lost in the whole. And I think, but we need that. We need that sense of magic. I am more than just my little individual life. I need to do my work, come back here and be the cell that I am and do my job as whatever I am. I can't pretend that I'm a liver cell when I'm a skin cell. I have to be what I am. But if I can step into that other magic and to remember that I am part of the body of the one, and that I am responsible to how I fit in and work with the whole. And that magic, I think of spiritual practice as what helps us switch from individual cell mind to body mind, to feeling at one. But if we get stuck there, I think that that's part of what happens with some addiction cycles, that it's so hungry for that sense of I want to feel more than my little cell. I don't want to be stuck in my little cellness. I want to feel part of the whole. And so we take things that dissolve our edges. Where I think of people who do sacred medicines, which can be good medicine if being stuck is in individual cell mind is your problem. But no one needs it all the time. You keep dissolving it, and I've met so many burnouts that just never rebuilt anything after they dissolved everything.
Oh,
It's like,
yes.
what's their new Saturn? What's their new structure? But that hunger to feel part of the one, to feel that collective, if we can do it in a healthy way, and then we can move into that sense of connection in our spiritual practice and back into this body, this life. What do I do about that? With my new understanding of connection, and moving back and forth between those is healthy. And I think that's such, that really honoring that hunger for those mystics that need more than the ugliness or the kind of loneliness of the broken minds, the individual, which is one reality, but it's only one of the dimensions of that reality. Does that make sense
Uh,
to you?
Absolutely. I love that. It's very inspiring. It gives me a lot to think about. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And something I think about a lot is I think that the opposite of addiction is community because addiction is
Right, exactly.
inherently
You're feeling one.
solo.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's lonely. And I feel like recovery gives the opportunity for community. I also feel that um, sobriety allows me to have a life that's so beyond my recovery too. And
Mm-hmm.
having
Mm-hmm.
tools, I was having tools to exist in a world that is filled with distraction and numbing. And because I don't want to be a hermit, that's like
Mm-mm.
that to me, that kind of solo, that loneliness, that I think of with addiction. But I like existing in this world. And the reality is, there's a lot of numbing out, and that's okay. I feel like, I think
Sometimes we
we
need a little
ex
insulation.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly, and I think that it's that moderation coming in and understanding what's the what's the balance of it all,
Mhm.
and I think that I don't know, I always this makes me laugh, but I think of like a silly show as almost like the equivalent of a glass of wine. Like if I could drink responsibly, maybe I'd have a glass of wine to dip out at the end of the day, but that path is does nothing good for me and it never ends with just one glass of
Mhm.
wine. But
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
a little a little show that invokes fantasy and the
Mhm.
imagination and takes me out of the everyday, why not? And I think we all
Mhm.
have our version of that. It could be a phone call with a friend. It could
Right.
be it really is
It's honoring that sensitivity, that the sensitivity has been overloaded and needs a little protection.
yes, exactly. Because
Mhm.
I feel like when you feel things so strongly, there were times in my life I felt like I was walking around with no skin. And that's a very intense way to be, and, I feel like when I'm working, I can connect with someone, I can really feel what's going on for them or their loved one who has passed on and have these visions and visuals and sensations, and that's great for work, and it's good in my relationships to a point, but it's lovely to know when it's time to just cap it too.
Mhm. I think it's gonna be really important this winter and this spring because the big picture, there's so much going on. And
Yes.
intuitives and spiritual people, we feel the pain that's
Yes.
happening in Iran and in the Mideast and in Africa and one reason why it's important to stay aware of the news is we don't always know why we're feeling what we're feeling, and it can be helpful. I remember years
Yes.
ago, to like, I'm picking this up because this is, there's a lot of tension going on. Well, I also call it divination by headlines, that if you see there's wars going on and people being shot, you may feel a little vulnerable and uncomfortable because the aspects are wild and they're conflict oriented, or right, they were very kind of control oriented the last 6 weeks. Now we're working on how do we heal that intense control issue. So, but I remember years ago teaching a class on intuition development in New Mexico. It was when I was living there, and we had a group of people that would come and we would share. We would do some journey work and we would do some divinity, like what are we picking up, and every one of them had an image, had either had a dream or this in this journey work of being hit in the stomach. It was like, oh, what am oh, what is this hitting in the stomach? And then we read that a meteor comet had just shot into Jupiter, and Jupiter had just gotten a giant hit to and people did drawings how they felt it, and it looked just like Jupiter getting hit by a comet. It was
Amazing.
so,
Wow.
that empathy. So if you know what you're picking up, you go like, oh, that's not mine. If you get a
Yes.
headache suddenly, you go like, "Who in this room has a headache? Could you please can I get you some aspirin?" Gonna can like to notice what's yours and what's not yours. That sometimes it's about diagnosis of the world's pains. How do you then help it? And that when you're aware of it, it becomes less yours.
Yes. Oh, Heather, I just had an experience with this last week. Can I tell you about it?
Please go for it.
So there is a restaurant that I go to all of the time here in the
Hmm.
city. And it's multi-levels. And there's one level I don't like to be on this floor. And I never really knew why. I have to be honest, like there's so much going on and I have so much
Yeah.
I'm keeping track of. This was very low
And New
level on
York
my
hotel. I mean,
priorities.
there's
Yeah,
New York restaurants are not
exactly.
quiet little places, right? Hmm.
Right. And there was one time I was eating at this restaurant with my friend, and the bathrooms that were on the main level were closed. And so if you needed to use a restroom, you had to go down to this floor that I didn't like being on. And I felt very creeped out. I felt uncomfortable. And I actually felt like fear. And I felt closed in. I even like almost like my breathing was restricted. I hated this feeling. So I just like ran into the
Hmm.
bathroom and ran out and went upstairs and I told my friend like I was like
Creeped out.
Yeah, I was just like, "Oh, I don't like that." And that experience happened probably like about a year ago. And then I was in the restaurant last week and I was waiting for a friend and I was talking to the woman who is the event planner for the space. And we were chattering and she was like, "Well," she's like, "How do you feel when you're here? Because you know that woman was murdered here." And I was like, my eyes widened and I was like, "It happened on the floor below, right?" And she was like, "Mhm." And I was like, "Near the bathrooms?" And she was like, "Yeah, I mean," and it was she told me the story. I mean, like I don't want to upset anyone, but it was a pretty I mean, murder's never like lovely, but it was and I was like, and then I told her about my experience, and it was exactly what you said, having the context
Made
helps
it
me
easy.
release
Right.
things, always, and
Absolutely.
my mom, who's also very sensitive, intuitive, Cancer Sun, Cancer Moon, and she's told me the same thing, she's like, about and, like, has helped me in work, like, helping me place the context of things, and it's
Mhm,
just it's
mhm,
so
mhm.
freeing, it's so helpful, and I
So
just
freeing.
having that experience,
It
I
can
just
be
wanted to
like
share that.
I'd often describe, like, when you're getting a hit, when you've get this feeling, if you can write it down, especially when people are first training their intuition, and
Mhm.
watch it, the hit can be true. It's our stories about the hit that can be so off and that, can
Yes.
be and then when we go like, "Oh, that didn't happen, I wasn't right." No, you're right. You just built a story about it that was wrong. So
Yes.
it's like how to break those 2 parts apart and begin to say, "Hmm, I'm gonna put that on my front porch. I am aware. I'm not taking it in. I'm not putting it away. I'm just gonna observe it. I'm gonna, like, see what I'm getting out of that feeling." Because it is such
Yes.
an, I've got a couple of variations on that story that also
I'm sure.
that something's off and or something is exciting, but what? And if you jump to conclusions, you can go off, but if you hear it there's a test, an old friend of mine who was a therapist and she worked with kinesiology, often, would do muscle testing, and she it was an experiment, for actors. There was in a teacher we were working with an acting teacher in an acting class, and they're talking about the psychic environment you build when you have a play, that you walk the whole audience through the arc of that, and if you're really in it, they have an emotional experience that goes along with it, viscerally. And so to
Mm.
think about the story that you're presenting. But one experiment did, she says, "I'm gonna send one person out of the room. First, we're gonna see that their muscles are nice and strong, send them out of the room, and then while they're gone, I want everybody here to think when they come back in that they're weak, that they cannot hold up their arm." And the person came back in and they couldn't hold up their arm for love or money, and no one's allowed to change their face. They're just and then sent them out, kind of like everybody's like, "They can do it." Came back in, strong as an ox. And then they sent them back out. They said, "Everybody think about they can't do it. Now come back in. Now I want you to know what's going on here." And then they explained the process that these people are doubting you and they think you can't do this. And then they had no trouble going past it. That once they were
Wow.
aware, they could shift
Mm.
that energy field. But if they
That makes
weren't
sense.
aware, they took it on.
Yes.
And so that's kind of like, how do we work with that sensitivity and that psychicness? And
Yes.
again, think this month in particular, everybody's gonna their intuition is really strong, especially as we head into Pisces in March. Um, but there's a lot going on that's really hard. And so to be aware that we're sitting in a stream with beautiful things going on in the world, but some really tough stuff. And
Yes.
that it's not necessarily us, that we can empathize with it, but we need to then tune into what's healthy so we can do something about that.
Yes.
To balance that.
Well, that's something I've been thinking about a lot is like, well, how am I taking care of myself? Because I don't, to me, it feels irresponsible to just like put my head in the sand. Like, I feel like I want to have the awareness, but then finding that middle ground so that I'm not just completely depleted. I even over the weekend I had that where I just was like so overwhelmed by the news and the state of the world that then I spent the day in bed and I was like, all right, that's what I needed today, but
Mhm.
I can't do the work I want to do
Mhm.
if I do that. And so I feel like for me, I love to do yoga and stretch and take walks in
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
neighborhood. I
Mhm.
love
Mhm.
spending time with people I love, and I feel like those are really helpful balances and that counteract some of that heaviness. But do you have anything you would add to that?
I think that that's such a beautiful thing to do all of that. And it's sometimes helpful to say, to notice. There's an axiom: pray rather than worry. That
Mm,
sometimes I have to
yes.
make sure that I do a ritual, a prayer, hold the people that I'm worried about in light, write my senator yet again,
Yes.
is there some money that I can send? Like, I do feel like I'm doing something, not just a passive response, because
Yes.
spirit helps us know what needs to be done, then we have to do something. But even just a little bit, it's magic. I mean, it's if you send money to people that are on the front lines doing good work, or you somehow help
Yes.
them, that is magic. You can send it with magic. It is saying, I want the best for them, and I'm putting some energy towards that. It's a ritual. And
Yes.
then you can take care of you. Like, and now I need to come back and make sure I'm doing my end of the work. But it's they support each other, those two. I
Yes.
do think.
Oh, I love that. I love thinking about it as a ritual
Mhm,
because I think that putting some energy to it, I think if possible, putting money towards it, I think
mhm, mhm.
really helps to
Or like, what
affirm.
do you have to offer? Because that could be,
Yes.
I have one friend who's cooking meals she's asking
Oh,
for us to give her a little
beautiful.
money so she can cook meals for the people that can't leave their house right now. And she's doing that. And I can support her. That's what she has no money. So she gets donations, she cooks the meals, she takes it out, she's doing good work in her neighborhood. That's really beautiful.
Oh, that's
Danielle,
so
we love you.
inspiring.
And so the combination of, so when you first, I'd like to come back to your first experience. Like, how can people turn the corner? What did you find when you were first getting sober and starting your magical journey? What was the best help? What helped you the most?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Or
Honestly, it was
a few things.
yeah, surrendering and
Neptune is a surrendering. Yes, go ahead.
oh, wow. Oh, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I did join a 12-step program
Mm-hmm.
and I felt a lot of push and pull around 12 steps. I wasn't sure as a witch, as a pagan, was this for me? It absolutely was for me.
You
I
can
felt so
translate it to any passive process. Yeah.
exactly. That's the thing about the higher power. You get to
Mm-hmm.
decide what your higher power is. And and that framework, that community, that welcoming really helped me. And and committing to a spiritual practice,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that may be. For me, it's paganism, but
Mm-hmm.
for anyone
Mm-hmm.
else, it's whatever feels right to you and connects you to that higher purpose, this greater network that's beyond us. And through the framework of 12 steps and the spiritual practice, I was able to understand why I was numbing out. Why was I doing this? Getting that
Mm-hmm.
context
Mm-hmm.
and understanding
Finding
that
saner ways to be sensitive. Yeah.
exactly, exactly, and understanding that it's okay to ask for help. I don't need to have everything figured out. Being able to
Mm-hmm.
admit I'm a endless learner, an endless student, and just there's nothing wrong with needing help. I feel like there's so much shame around so much as a human, and we have nothing to be ashamed of. We are just trying to figure this thing of life out. And that's why I really connect with the fool's journey
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
idea of a fool and the fool card in tarot. And I mean, he looks quite happy in the imagery. And so why not be a fool and embark upon something else?
Mhm.
There's something very freeing in knowing that what I'm doing isn't working, so let me try something else. And doing
Right.
something different is
That's
really
beautiful.
powerful.
That's a
Thank you.
really beautiful use of it. And uh, yes, I've the strong arm I've used for myself and you. We're both Virgos, and Virgos are who
Yes.
helps other people, not who ask for help.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
that I know that it feels like a joy to me when I know I can be helpful to people, and that why would I deprive somebody else of feeling like that when they help me?
I think the same thing, Heather, and I'm like
Eh,
I'm like
it can be we have to talk ourselves into it, right? But
exactly,
receiving
yeah.
that help. Mhm.
And
So
I
how can people come to you if they need your help? Your guide as an intuitive who's helping can coach them with their sensitivities, or as a reader, or as your work as a medium. How do they access you?
absolutely. My website is iamsarahpotter.com, Sarah with an H, and I'm on every social media with that same handle. I am Sarah Potter, and I'm booking one-on-one readings. My books are always open. Sometimes there's a varying degree of
Mhm.
wait time. And I lead full moon parties once a month in Asbury Park, New Jersey. So if you want to come connect with me and the moon and you're near the Jersey Shore, I hope you'll join me. And I do travel a lot promoting my book, doing rituals throughout the country. I have my
And the name
eyes
of your
on
book again?
my book is Sober Magic, using tarot and ritual in your journey away from drinking. And it's available wherever books are sold. And I'd love to connect with you. If you feel the call to connect with me, I hope you follow it.
Wonderful. And this is we I will see you all back here. I have with Access Astrology on once a week. It's Thursdays at the moment. We'll probably go back to Tuesdays in a few months, but one of our people is busy on Tuesdays, so we have Thursdays that we can have a look at the month ahead, and we do little readings every month. You can meet me here for a view of what is happening in um, the next month, and then a talk with a wonderful person who's also somewhere on the path. And I can find, if you Google Starcodes, you will find um, my weekly column on the astrology of the week and the Starcodes book. If anybody's interested in walking through, this is to make it as accessible as possible, the whole field of astrology, in a choice based approach, because I believe that it's free will, grace, and our chart all working together that helps our life unfold. Now, I'm also available for individual readings. You can book online on my rowanrobbins.com. And my prices are going up for the first time in 7 years in March. So if you're interested, feel free to book sooner. In any case, it's been a real pleasure working with you, Sarah. I hope
Oh,
that your life
I've
unfolds with joy.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed our time together. I have a copy of my book here I forgot to hold
Okay,
up.
hold it up.
And um, I just love your approach to astrology, and I love how empowering you always remind to all of us. So thank you so much for having me and letting me share some of my story and my books over magic.
Well, great. Take care. Take Bye.
Bye.